Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Tittle Tattle Tarot. It's Georgie. And on the table helping me today, I have the Deviant Moon deck. I want to go back to the 60s, mid to late 60s. I am looking at the relationship between Yoko Lennon and, or Yoko Ono, and Paul McCartney, and generally the Beatles. But I'm looking at this energy of Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono in particular, their joint energies. This is going to be from Paul McCartney's point of view. So John Lennon met Yoko Ono in about 1966, I think it was. That was their very first meeting. But by the later 60s, you know, they were very much a couple. And, you know, her influence was coming into the Beatles and all of that. So, you know, she was very much a presence around Paul McCartney and the other members of the band. And I just want to get a reading from Paul's energy on this whole situation. I'm going to do a Celtic Cross and just see what the energy was like around 1968, 1969, around that sort of period. This will be interesting because I think I've said to you before, I'm not a Beatles fan. I don't dislike them, but I don't really know a great deal at all about them. I'm not into Beatles music. So, you know, it's going to be very interesting to see what this brings up because I have no sort of interest in this period. Which probably sounds like sacrilege, really, but I don't. So it will be interesting to see what I pick up from the cards, which won't have any bias on it. It will just be, you know, what the cards can tell me from Paul McCartney's perspective about this woman, Yoko Ono, being very much a part and being around the Beatles and certainly influencing John Lennon as much as she did. So let's just pull a Celtic Cross. We'll pull all the positions and then we'll discuss it. We'll see what the cards are trying to let us know, trying to tell us about this period in time. So we're going for Paul McCartney, 1968, 1969, around that kind of time, and the energy around Yoko Ono in the studio. Okay, let's just pull the Celtic Cross. Okay, so that's very much central energy. Now I'll come up the outside. Okay, so let's see what we've got here, right in the very center. So let's say that the Beatles are in the studio. We've got Paul McCartney, the other members of the Beatles, and also Yoko Ono, and they're all in the studio. Well, you're stuck there. This is a traveling card. It's moving on. It's leaving one place, going to another, whether that's mentally or physically. They were all in, and I guess that a recording studio, I've never been in one, but I would imagine it's just like a small box. So they're all in this small box together. This is like the freedom to move on from one place to another. But if you've basically got 5 people in a recording box, there you are. You're hemmed in with them, and your little airship is not moving off anywhere. You very sort of claustrophobic situation of 5 energies in one place, whereas before maybe it was 4 energies. So stuck. You're stuck there. You're not moving on. Okay, so we're in a little box in a recording studio, stuck, and Paul McCartney we are talking about here. We have the Hanged Man. Now, I think that he tried to step back and he tried to see this for what it was, tried to see this as the girlfriend of John Lennon, tried to look at this from a different perspective. He tried to sort of put himself in the hangman, just take a step back and look at it upside down, look at it in a different way. How would I feel if that was me? But he couldn't quite get to grips with this. I think that it was probably so out of his comfort zone for someone else other than the four of them to be in a recording studio. And he tried his hardest to see it from John's point of view, but he couldn't. He couldn't. He did try, but he wasn't able to quite work out, his feelings on it. He felt very he felt very discombobulated about, this fifth energy being in this studio, because that was not the thing that they'd ever done before. And although he tried to look at it from John's point of view, he couldn't. And he saw it as being unjust. It wasn't the right way of doing things. He would have thought to himself, well, Linda doesn't come into the studio, the other wives, girlfriends, what have you, they don't come into the studio. And, I'm doing my best to hold back and not say anything about Yoko being in the studio, but this is not right. The swords are down. Swords are up. Yes, that's great. That's fine. Yes, yeah, great. Her input, like to have her there. Justice, yes, it's right that she's there. No. And this was the overall in the head of him, it's not right, she shouldn't be in here. So we've got a very prickly situation here, and he's put up barriers. This is the bottom. He's tried to keep his calm, he's tried to keep his cool, but he's actually put up barriers. The Seven of Wands is very much you feel that you have the higher ground, and maybe you do to some extent, but the perspective on this card, it's always looking up at this person. The Seven of Wands is very much, well, I have got the higher ground. I've got morality on my side. Keep back from me. I've got rights on my side because this is wrong. This is a wrong situation. I'm in the better situation. I'm the better person. Keep back. Get back. Get back. So yeah. That's very much the energy, this barrier against the Beatles, particularly against Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono. Get back. How appropriate is that? In the past, I think they'd always juggled these very creative energies. There's always been niggling and argy-bargy between the Beatles, between especially Lennon and McCartney. The creativeness, it's going to be that sort of juggling energy, juggling emotions, juggling creativity. You get creative people butting up against each other, and I've got this here, but they managed to rub along, they managed to keep the plate spinning, managed to keep it all going, because Emperor, who is the Emperor? And it is that kind of situation. You've got Emperor, but there was more than one Emperor. You've got John Lennon, and you've got Paul McCartney. Obviously, you've got the other two Beatle members, but the main writing talents, you've got two emperors. And again, this is your juggling energy. Who's the real emperor? Who's the one with the most talent? Who's the creative force behind things? So, it's like vying for top position here. Who's the real deal in all of this? So, you've got some very insecure energy here, and some very barriered energy. So let's come up the outside. The Page of Wands, this is a message. It's creative. It's wands are passionate, creating things. It's music, it's singing, it's the passion of lyrics and all that kind of thing. Page of Wands, yeah, you've got two energies. You've got the McCartney and you've got the Lennon, and whose energy is going to win in this? This is very much sort of a battling thing. Which side is going to come out victorious in this situation? So that's the message that's going out. This is confrontational, and it's very much not sure who's got the upper hand here. Sometimes Lennon has, sometimes McCartney has, but it's always this juggling, very, very uncomfortable. Wheel of Fortune, what do people see from the outside? And by people, I do mean people. I don't mean the other band members. I see, this as, their manager, their fans and everything. Wheel of Fortune, my God, this group is at the top of their wheel. We've got Wheel of Fortune upright. They're amazing. They're gods the way they create this music. They can't do any wrong. It's perfect. It's perfect music. Perfect band. Look at those boys, they are amazing, but that is not the way it was. The actual public image, what the public saw and what the outside influence was not what was going on. There's very much this that side and juggling who's the emperor. And this whole thing with Yoko Ono as well, being barriered against her. But the public didn't see that. They just saw or heard these wonderful songs, saw these musicians and thought that, oh, they have it all. They have everything on their side and everything is right. What was the fear? The devil is in the detail, isn't it? I think the fear was that things were coming to an end here, that Lennon was being influenced by this woman who's in the studio. I'm not saying that she was an evil influence, but it was divisive. And the devil sort of pulls things apart and separates people and creates difficulty in situations. So I think Yoko Ono was seen as the devil in this because she was introducing John to a whole different, world of music, a whole different world of expression that was taking John in a different direction to Paul and the other members of the band. So, this blocking, Paul McCartney was very, very aware of this underlying current with Yoko Ono, of her pulling him away. And this is what the devil does. She wasn't the devil, but that sort of destructive pulling John Lennon in a different direction and causing that friction and that pulling apart. And then we have Judgment. And I think in the end, Paul McCartney realized that, these two people, they were meant to be together. No matter what he thought of Yoko Ono, the judgment was that they were right for each other and they were meant to be together. She took him in a different direction. He left and they went in a different direction. But I think that Paul McCartney realized that Yoko Ono was John's muse and inspired him for, the stuff that he did on his own. So I think he sort of then took this hanged man position. He could really step back and see it. And Paul McCartney went on, he was doing things with Linda and, his whole stuff, on his own. But I think there was so much tension and so much barriering when she first sort of came into that studio. It feels very uncomfortable. But by the end, it was, it's judgment. They are meant to be together. They're meant to be together. So I'm just going to get right to the heart of the situation on this and just see what the cards say for the very, very heart of this situation. Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono. I think there was always, even though he accepted it with the judgment, that she was Lennon's muse, and that being that muse, it allowed him to create music of that genre that was inspired by her. She was his inspiration. But the moon, I think he thought that it was a deceptive thing. I don't think that they'd really had proper open communication. The moon to me is always sort of still waters run deep, the things that go on underneath that are never really expressed. It's not open communication. It's not it's not transparent. The moon is very opaque. You're not quite sure what's going on. And I think him and the other band members were always sort of not knowing where they stood with this. They would have seen her as, you know, this woman, where they stood with this arty woman. Who was this? And, you know, what were her motives? And I think that's very much the moon. And stealing away, you know, I think no matter how he looked at it, it was almost like there's Yoko, there's John, and they're running off, and John's looking over his shoulder back at the Beatles. She's got her arm around him. Come on, John, we're going. And she's a very strong woman, and very artistic, very creative. And yeah, it was just always, she got under his skin in some way. I think that's also that moon energy. This woman, this artist, this very creative woman who was unknown, got under this man's skin and dragged him away. But he did realize that, you know, they were meant to be together. But wow, what uncomfortable energy, very uncomfortable energy. It's interesting, as I say, I don't know about the Beatles. I'm not a fan. I would love to know what you think about that period in time, because you're probably much more au fait with this than I am. Any input that you have, anything I've said that you want to add to, I would love to hear. Let me know your favourite Beatles song. Let me know your favourite John Lennon song, and let me know how much you think Yoko Ono inspired him through his life, because she certainly did, I believe, you know, this judgment, that was correct. They were meant to be together. But it caused a lot of barriering within the Beatles. So I shall leave that one with you. I enjoyed doing that, and I'll be back again with another one very soon. You take care. Bye-bye.